People can spoof our voices, and they're even spoofing videos now. It's crazy what
Yeah.
deep fakes can do, and we're all reading a lot about that. And I don't want to scare people away from the process, but we can really do a better job by working local, communicating with people that we're familiar with, verifying phone numbers, and then look out for last minute changes. I would say if there's a last minute change of any kind, doubly verify it.
Hi, Dave Nichols.
Hey, good morning, Phil. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. Dave Nichols with Lighthouse Title.
Live and in person.
How about that? That's great. This is going to be informative today. It's
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate
yeah.
it very
Well,
much.
thanks for joining me because title insurance is something that we need. Not everyone understands, I don't think. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit about your industry. And then we don't have 4 hours, but I do want to touch on FinCEN because that lovely thing reared its head this week.
Yes, yeah, yeah, FinCEN. It's the other way
FinCEN,
around. You got it.
FinCEN. I'm sorry. Yeah, see, there
Yeah,
you go. That's why it's trouble already.
it's confusing.
Yeah. Tell me about Dave and how long you've been in the title world.
Yeah, I have been around title insurance since about 1993, 94 or so. My experience now has a three handle, which makes me feel old sometimes, but we'll just say rather than old, we'll say experienced. But I
Okay.
got into the title insurance business back then. I was still in college at the time and took a job with a local title company. It's actually a large national underwriter. Took a job with them being a courier
Oh, wow.
while I was in school, and started picking up document packages and dropping off payoffs to banks and picking up title orders. Email was just getting legs, and fax machines were like the fastest thing around to communicate
Wow.
documents and stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, we've been through a lot of change, but it's been a good ride.
Yeah, I bet you've seen a lot of change for sure. Wow. So what would you say is the biggest change you've seen in that amount of time?
I would say the way in which we communicate and the speed at which deals get done. If you can think back, or if any of your viewers can our age, you think back, overnight was the fastest way to communicate updated documents or changes, right? And then maybe fax machines were part of that process at some point. Maybe they were wrestling between the two. And I would say communication, but both between customers and the clients, as well as internally, right? So if we were going to try to move documents or work with a realtor or a lender on a new document or a new closing, completely completely changes things
Sure.
today. We're working so fast today with emails and with texts and with how fast the documents go. And now we're moving documents at the speed of the internet as opposed to, so we're closing, sometimes we can make changes and close in days and make changes inside of minutes now instead of rescheduling things. And so
Yeah.
it's helped
Yeah.
us be more efficient.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So let's step back in time again a little bit.
Mhm.
You owned America's One Title Agency.
Mhm.
And so what was that and how did that evolve into Lighthouse Title?
Yeah, I had been in the industry about 14 years, and I was working for a large national underwriter at the time, and still in the Grand Rapids market is where I lived. And our company was part of a merger. And a lot of times with mergers, you get redundancy in operational roles. And so I found myself outside of a job looking in, thinking, what's my next move going to be? I thought, like many times, if people have ever been through those experiences, you think to yourself a little. It's emotional at first, and you're like, I'm going to do something totally different. I don't, how dare I get cast aside? But after about 2 or 3 hours of that kind of stinking thinking, I was like, this is what I know. This is what I love. I love real estate. I fell in love with title insurance really because of the deal. I've always loved. I was started out as a closer after my career role, and so then got into sales and stuff. And I loved putting deals together and closing transactions and being a part of that process. And I thought, I'm going to go out and see if there's a space or a place in the market for me to start my own business. And that entrepreneurial bug was in my head at the time. And I said to my wife, if I don't try it now, I probably will never try it. In my 30s at the time, I thought, let's give it a shot. And I did a little consulting, got my licensing in order, and started figuring out what old clients I might be able to ring up and see if I could get some support. And one thing led to another, and America's One Title was born in 2007. Actually, 2006 was when we started working the underpinnings. 2007 was when we really kicked it in gear. And then we had a great run. We started during a very interesting time in the real estate, 2007, 2008,
Yeah,
2009,
right.
right? Those years mean something automatically to those of us who've been in real estate during that time. And what's really interesting, Phil, is that ended up being a wonderful time to start in business. It was a very difficult time to stay in business, right?
Yes.
If you'd already had a large following and a large group of offices or a significant employee base, right? As customers were rolling in and as deals were skinnying up, it was difficult for mid-size and larger companies. It ended up being a really great time for small startup companies. And I think a little bit of luck at that time, and we rode that wave all the way up from the bottom and then sold in 2023 to Lighthouse Title.
Okay. 2023. And now what is your role at Lighthouse Title?
So I'm a senior vice president with Lighthouse Title. I'm still president of America's One Title. But America's One is one of probably 17, 18 brands within the Lighthouse family of title companies. And as senior VP, I oversee pretty much all of the operations, regardless of the brand, all of our operations and ventures from about Manistee, south of Traverse City, all the way down along the lakeshore to Indiana, basically to the Indiana border. We operate in Michigan and in Wisconsin today, and we have over 60 offices
Wow.
that at America's One Title is a part of. So it's been a really great move. It's been a good addition for Lighthouse. And my clients and my employees under the America's One brand really all experienced a win-win with Lighthouse Title. It's been a great organization to become part of.
Awesome. I want to make sure I mention this now, and it'll be mentioned several times during the podcast, but thank you to Lighthouse Title for your sponsorship of this podcast. Without you, this wouldn't be possible, so thank you.
You're very welcome. We very much appreciate the opportunity to be a part of your show, and we do a lot of community giving. It's very important to our president and to those of us at the executive level to always be a part of the communities, giving back to the communities that we work in.
So, thinking of that, I know you as an organization have been involved in Habitat for Humanity quite heavily. What other kinds of organizations does Lighthouse Title support?
We have support a lot of things in Holland where our corporate offices are. Tulip Time is a big one for us. Jubilee Ministries is another one in addition to Habitat for Humanity. In most of the markets that we work in, there is a Habitat.
Yeah.
We support HRS, Home Repair Services in Kent County,
Oh, sure.
Michigan.
Yep.
Some of our nationals are Compassion International. We do some sponsorships with Operation Christmas Child. Those are some of the places that we've been a part of. A lot of local organizations as well that are near and dear to hearts of our customers, or in many cases, our employees
Yeah.
are part of that as well. A lot of great places, no shortage in Western
Yeah.
Michigan in terms of ministries and areas to give.
Right.
It's certainly a fun place to be a part of, and there's always some great opportunities, and we're always open to other ones as well.
Very good. So, what in the world is title insurance?
Yeah, title insurance. Being in the industry all these years, I've heard so many people say things like, so what are we doing here? What exactly is title insurance? Why are we here? And a lot of people think title insurance is a means to an end. And in some ways it is. Some people even think of it like a commodity, right? It's like, oh, it is what it is. I got to get it. The reality is our insurance is very unique. We insure the history instead of most insurances that we have insure the future. We insure the past, and so that makes us unique. We also have one premium, one and done. So that's another thing that makes us very unique in the insurance industry. So people pay for this policy one time. And imagine, Phil, your buyers and sellers, they pay for their policies at the closing table. If the buyer lives in that property 20, 25 years, 35 years, that insurance remains in place and covers them, or effectively gives them peace of mind for that whole period of time, for that one premium. So I think it's probably the best value in title insurance. I've even heard Dave Ramsey say he would never buy real estate without title insurance. A lot of people respect and admire Dave. But title insurance protects the past. So we look for and protect against liens that are in the past on the property. So people use their property to secure financing, right? So there's unpaid judgments that could be levied against properties. There's all kinds of ownership disputes that might occur in the past of a property and be unresolved. We insure things like clerical or recording errors in some cases. As you and maybe some of your viewers know, the public record is what basically creates the chain of a title. And if somebody has a problem on the title, it might be contained in the public records. And so we spend a lot of time looking at those, evaluating those documents for each property that we insure. And we also take a look at and sometimes insure things like easements or encroachments even on properties. So all things that people can relate to. If you've been a property owner, chances are you may have had some of these questions, or maybe even sometimes a dispute. And without title insurance, you're on your own. You've got to figure that dispute out. One of the most important characteristics of title insurance is it's a defense policy. So that means if there is a problem, a covered matter on a policy that comes up and it's covered under the title insurance policy, not only do we address the issue, but we may have to defend someone's title in the process, or maybe create documents or pay off a neighbor or pay off an old lien. And both of those components are covered matters in a title insurance policy. The value of a policy is based on the purchase price. That's if you paid $250,000 or $750,000 for your home, that's the amount of insurance coverage that you have in your title insurance defense policy.
So let's play through a scenario. I have closed on my property, and for whatever reason, a lien wasn't caught during the examination of the documents and so on. And now a lender shows up at my door and says, you owe me whatever, 15,000, 50,000, 500,000, whatever it is.
Yeah, right.
That's when I get a hold of Lighthouse Title and say, help.
Exactly. Okay. You would call up your title company if you remember where you closed. A lot of people, if they don't remember their title company, they probably remember their real estate agent. I know that would be important to you. They would call. And so then you would say, hey, you need to call Lighthouse Title and let's talk about whether or not this is a covered matter. In this case, if it was a missed lien or a misrecorded lien or something along those lines, we would help them open up a claim with the insurer, that because we're an agency, so that means that we have underwriters that we write these policies on, and for a portion of the premium, they take on some of the long-term risk insurance liability that is associated. So we would open up a claim. We'd help them, or the insurer would open up a claim, and then they would investigate. And if it was a covered matter, they would pay it off, or they would negotiate some kind of a payment, or if it was an easement problem, they would compensate somebody who maybe experienced a loss, maybe even the insured in some cases could be experiencing a loss. Sometimes there'll be another example that's easier for people to understand is when sometimes an easement goes across the back of a person's acreage, right? They own a lot of acres. Maybe 30, 50 years ago, there was given some easement for drive or walking or something along those lines, or maybe it was even access. And if something like that can become a problem. Now somebody wants to build a horse pasture back there, or they want to put a cabin back there, and now they've got this easement going through, right? So that's another example of something. And so we might work with a neighbor, we might work with the property owner to come up with a solution on those types of covered matters. And that's probably the most important thing about title insurance is none of us have a really good understanding of what's happened to the property before we've owned it. And that's really what we insure, is many of those potential issues that could pop up in the future, but are from the past.
Okay. Good to know. That's a good explanation. Thank you. How, I know wire fraud is a
Mm.
very prevalent thing in every industry, but is title fraud something that we should be aware of? I hear ads on the radio or the TV that says I should buy something extra
Yeah.
to protect my deed, my title. Is that a thing?
Yeah, we do get that question a lot, and I'm really glad you asked me that because it's something that's very popular today. We have ID theft insurance coverage. Many of us have policies in place, or they're provided to us maybe by our through our homeowners insurance, and I know I have one as well, right? We've all experienced fraud on our credit card or in our bank accounts, right? And so the latest and greatest is title fraud, right? That's the one that we seem to be hearing a lot about, where people can do something to our property, sell our property out from under us, that kind of a thing. So there are a variety of companies in the marketplace that are advertised on. I've seen them heard them on the radio, seen them around. My professional opinion is, I think with knowledge and with a little bit of skin in the game, most of us as property owners and most of your listeners and your clients and my clients have at their fingertips the skills or the tools necessary to address those concerns without spending 17, 18, 19, $20 a month. That's one of the things that I've noticed as I've investigated those types of products. I don't think it's necessary for a couple of reasons. Number one, the most significantly different thing that these companies do is they monitor public records on behalf of their customer in an automated sense, in an automated environment. So they probably have some piece of software that just goes out of there buying public data and they're running it up against their customer base by name, address, that type of thing. Most of us can do that ourselves through public records. The public records in our particular counties where we all live and have our primary residences or secondary residences, many of those have public record indexes right out for available on the website. And so you can go out, I can go out, type in my address and look at what's being recorded or what's been recorded on my property in the last weeks, months, years. Many of them have gone back and rescanned in data decades back. So there's a little bit of that as well. And that's essentially what a lot of these companies are doing, but in an automated environment, right? But we can do that on an annual basis, biannual basis, pull up our Kent County or our Ottawa County records or wherever we might happen to live and do that ourselves. So that's something that we can do to save ourselves some headache. You can also reach out to your local title company that provided your owner's policy. We could periodically do updates for them, and it would be a lot less expensive than $20 a month in perpetuity.
Sure.
There's one new thing that's in the market today. As of last year, the American Land Title Association, which is who title agents and title insurers use as a central sort of, not really governing, but it's more of an industry association, if you will, that looks out for both those of us that participate in the industry as well as our clients. We have together put out a new endorsement to policies, and this now covers some post-policy fraud and forgery, deed forgeries, those types of things. Our clients, buyers, homeowners and home buyers can get those types of endorsements now built into their owners' policies at the time of closing, which provides for future coverage for some of those types of matters. So I think some of those things used together could save your listeners and our clients and people within our sphere some valuable dollars on a monthly basis by just knowing how to go about looking for some of those types of fraudulent activities themselves. The last thing I'll say about that, Phil, is it takes a little bit of time for somebody to find a property like a vacant land that somebody might own free and clear and not go to very often. That tends to be one of the hotbeds. They're going to have to get that property, identify that property, then they're going to have to fraudulently contact a realtor. And you know as well as I know, too, there's a lot of fraud prevention measures that are done at that level on verifying seller identities, verifying legitimate property ownership and the like. And then they would have to go through the process of listing and selling, and every one of those steps along the way would all have to be fraudulently attempted and prevailed upon in order for that to happen. And there are so many safeguards along the way that have been built in the last 3 to 5 years. I feel like the efforts are not going to go away, but the likelihood of those things happening to the average homeowner, landowner, I think are certainly on the lighter side statistically, in my opinion.
Yeah, good to know. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, when you are doing a closing for a buyer and a seller,
Yes.
what makes for a successful, smooth transaction?
Oh, great question. Education is probably the number one. Education and clarity of communication. You and I have worked together, our companies, our employees have worked together a lot on deals over the years, and I think trusted professionals that are familiar with one another is another important part of that as well. So educating the buyer and seller on what to expect, clearly communicating to them of the process, how it's going to happen, setting those expectations that are realistic. A lot of people will say close in 15 days, 30 days, 45 days. All those are possibilities, of course, depending on the nature of the transaction and the funding and so forth. But making sure that we've got all the forms in place and we've communicated clearly and we've got a trusted group of professionals around the buyer and seller, I think those are all things that are fundamental to a smooth transaction. And having folks that work together on a regular basis is super, super important, I think, to the process because you and I do this hundreds and hundreds of times. Buyers and sellers do it 5 times, 3 times to 7 times. And so that's really important too for buyers and sellers to work with people who are truly experienced professionals in their particular industry.
Yeah, I totally agree. Before we continue, I'd like to give a big shout out to our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible. Lighthouse Title, Independent Bank, Josh DeVries Mortgage Lender, Cooper Insurance, Jose Morales, in partnership with Fremont Mutual Insurance. Thank you for your support. Check out their info in the description below. Let's dive back in. What should buyers, sellers, realtors be paying more attention to right now?
I think for buyers especially, most of us have personal emails, probably a Gmail or a Yahoo mail or something along those lines. And I know we've talked a little bit about fraud already, but we can't talk enough about fraud, in my opinion. The bad guys are getting way better. They're getting so much more creative at how they kind of sneak into the process and being the use of AI, the use of frankly just being more patient. They're studying how American real estate transactions, the Western real estate transactions are done, and many times they have simplified their process. They haven't gotten more sophisticated. They've gotten a little bit just simplified, meaning they could potentially, we've seen it where they lie in wait and watch conversations in an inbox, email back and forth between you and me, hypothetically, right? Or your customer and you. And they're doing that because they're learning phrases, they're learning nuances, they're learning the rhythm of the transaction. And in some respects, through that, they're almost socializing their fraud into the process, and it becomes harder to detect.
Sure.
And so I would say with the sophistication of AI, but also the proliferation of the fraudsters out there, that's probably the most important thing for folks to be aware of when they're in a transaction. And that could be them talking to their banker, that could be them talking to a title company, or them talking to their realtor. All very important relationships that are necessary and part of the transaction, but entry points for the bad guys through the Gmail process, right? Through an unsophisticated, relatively open email process. So how do we combat that? Face-to-face, voice-to-voice, sometimes maybe utilizing a little bit less technology. Validation. Verification is another one. People can spoof our voices, and they're even spoofing videos now. It's crazy what deep fakes can do, and we're all reading a lot about that. And I don't want to scare people away from the process, but we can really do a better job by working local, communicating with people that we're familiar with, verifying phone numbers, and then look out for last-minute changes. I would say if there's a last-minute change of any kind, doubly verify it.
Sure.
Make sure,
Yeah.
follow up, ask it, because I can tell you as a title company, we rarely, if ever, will change where we have clients send money electronically or would send documents electronically. And that tends to be one of the more popular ways where the fraudster might sneak in and say, hey, Phil, Dave, we just changed our bank account, send your money here.
Yeah.
And we would never do that, number one, and we would certainly never communicate it that way, even if we did.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I have two other questions for you as we're getting a little short on time, but I
Okay.
think they're both are very important. Relates to fraud, as we were just talking about. I know the recent, I guess you'd call it regulation that came up, FinCEN is whatever, 1,000 pages long or whatever it may
Yeah,
be. Could you tell us about that in the infamous Reader's Digest version?
you betcha. So FinCEN, Financial Center of Crimes Enforcement, that's a government entity who are tasked with combating money laundering. So they want to get bad, dirty money out of residential real estate transactions in the United States. They created a rule over the last decade or so. They've created a rule and tested it in different markets. As of March 1st, just this year, this month, March 1st, the rule went into effect. When you have a residential property sale with an entity buyer, so a non-individual, so we're talking corporation, LLC, that kind of thing, cash transaction, entity buyer in residential real estate. Those are the three kind of general parameters. We as
Excuse me, Dave, would that also
Yep.
include I'm buying a house in my trust? Does that included in that as well?
Yep, that's considered an entity as well.
Okay.
Yep, in most cases. And so if we're utilizing cash and an entity and it's residential in nature, as of March 1st, we now have to report specific information about the buyer into the government through a portal. And we are prepared to do that. We have a service that helps us meet the requirement, the regulatory requirement. The most important thing, though, is we need a little bit of extra time potentially to get that information from the buyer. And the information that we're going to request from the buyer will be information that verifies the beneficiary, the individual beneficiary behind the entity. That's really what the government is trying to identify. And so that's the really most simple version of what's happening or what has happened and what our responsibility is to this new rule. The most interesting thing, though, is March 19th, there was a district court finding on a lawsuit that started back several months ago before the rule went into effect, challenging the rule. And this particular judge actually vacated it March 19th. So we're right in the middle of things happening very quickly. Also, what's happening now is we're still collecting that data. Our agencies are still collecting that data, but we're not required technically to report until that particular judgment is now appealed. So this just happened. This is hot off the press
Sure.
just last week. So
Sure.
there's a lot of confusion around it. But my advice to you and to anybody watching this would be residential entity buyer with cash. Talk to your title company, talk to your realtor, make sure that the transaction, get the latest and greatest from your agencies or from your agents surrounding that, so that you make sure that you comply with that new rule, and whether or not it's in or out of effect will help you navigate that process.
Is there a dollar limit if I'm buying a piece of land for $60,000 versus a house for $400,000? Does it matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. And most of us would think that there would be a limitation on that. Remember, especially since the whole point of this is to identify money laundering and dirty money. But the fact of the matter is, Phil, there is not a threshold,
Okay.
not a threshold at all. So
Okay.
that might be one of the things that comes out of it, because that would seem rational, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Dirty money coming from some bad guy is it going to be a $50,000 rehab?
Yeah.
Or $150,000 primary residence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there might be some more changes coming, but it could be a while.
Okay. Just thinking, yesterday I had the opportunity, and it was very good. Keller Williams, who I'm a agent with, and had a regional meeting, and the subject was AI, artificial intelligence, and the positive impact that can have and has had on our realtors in the real estate world. Your examiners do a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And they're checking documents and all of those sorts of things. Have you seen AI come into play to help make that more efficient, or is the industry not there yet, or have you been doing that for 3 years, and what's the status of that?
Yeah, great question and very insightful. Yes, the short answer is yes. We are the title industry is embracing early phases of AI, and we are starting to see it used in what we would call like refinance activity or search activity. There are varying degrees of searching and examining and document reviewing that we do depending on the type of transaction. And there are certain transactions where we might need to just go back to the current owner. Maybe we want to go back one or two owners. And there are some products available in the title insurance arena. They are more of a wholesale type of product. So there's not anything that a consumer could purchase directly necessarily that I'm aware of. But most of us in the title insurance industry are utilizing it or can be utilizing it on some basic level. So it's still early. I would say we're late adopters maybe, or I don't know. It's moving so fast.
Right.
I would say
Right.
that it's starting to impact our industry. I think the smarter that those large language models get, the more specific that they become with respect to looking at old documents, looking for key phrases, looking for values and dollar amounts and stuff like that. I think we're going to see more and more of that being utilized. I don't see any massive changes yet in terms of affecting people's jobs or title searchers' jobs or examiners' jobs yet, because people are still managing the models and they need to review the data. And I see that happening in the future, but I also can see how quickly those things develop, the technology develops at such a rate that it could become more and more precise. So yeah, we've got some basic products that we're utilizing AI on, and I think it's making a small difference in our back room. I think it will probably make a more and more significant difference and impact changes for us even more, certainly in the next few years.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, like you said, it is moving so fast. I'm an old guy, and so last night I texted my grown adult sons and shared some information, and they were like, yeah, where you been? I'm like, oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm old.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's
Dave,
fast,
if
furious.
someone wanted to reach out to Lighthouse Title to ask questions, to learn more about Lighthouse Title, where would they go?
We have a web presence, of course. Lighthouse Title would be a great website for people to visit. You can check out our site there, see all of our locations throughout Michigan and Wisconsin. An email would be info@lighthousetitle.net, fairly simple to memorize as well, info@lighthousetitle.net. Or they could always reach us the good old-fashioned way at 888-782
Say that number again
Lighthouse
one
Title
more time,
Group.
Dave.
1-888-782-3210.
Awesome. Hey, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, The Keys to the Community. It means a lot to me for you to be here to tell us about Lighthouse, again, being one of the lead sponsors of this, and very educational. I appreciate it very much, Dave, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much, Phil. It was my pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Keys to the Community. Make sure you subscribe and stay connected to what's happening across West Michigan. And if real estate is on your mind, reach out. I'd love to help.